Afternoon, everybody. Even though I'm sharing my PowerPoint screen, I took John's advice and got another monitor a little while ago, so I can still see your faces and I can still see the chat. So if you want to interject when I'm talking, I can still see you. I can still hear you. I can still see your words. And as Michelle always says, I do invite you to turn your camera on, but it is, of course, not necessary. We all know what it's like to talk to faces, and we all know what it's like to talk to boxes. So if you want to be a face, that's cool. And if you want to be a box, that's cool too. I choose box sometimes myself. And so my name is Dr. Michael Chanis, and I'm a third-year visiting assistant professor, and I am in the Department of Anthropology. And I'm also the director of Native American Studies here. And I have a confession to make. I am not good with names. And it has been my whole life that this has been an occurrence. I'm better with faces. So during the pandemic, it's been particularly difficult for me in order to, thanks, David. Once I found this meme, I knew it was going right to the top. I knew it was going to be difficult for me to keep up with learning everybody's name in my class. Especially because I wasn't worried about the small classes. I have two 35 cap classes, but I was worried about the large format class, my 100-person class. So I'm going to be focusing mostly on those large format classes, over 50, over 100. I know some of you have classes of 150 and up to 350. Some of these strategies you might find useful, others you'll have to tailor particularly for your discipline, for what you want to get out of class, for the interaction you're having with your students, and obviously for the amount of bodies in one place at a time. So what are some basic strategies for learning your students' names? First is the name placard. I'm sure you're all familiar with this. It's just like Zoom. Somebody takes out a placard and puts it on their desk so you know what their name is. This doesn't work for me. It works. It'll work for some of you. I'm sure in one of the big classes, the 300 or 350 person classes, like that's going to be maybe your only ability to call students by name throughout the semester. I can tell you that this doesn't work for me just by saying, I remember my students from Zoom. I can associate their name with their face less than students who I had in person. Because on Zoom, we always have this ability. Oh, Susan Hammerly. Oh, David Kreider. Oh, Fred Scholes. Oh, Jeffrey Sly, right? To be able to know exactly who everybody is in our class at the same time. So use the placard if it works for you, that device, but that just tells me what somebody's name is. It doesn't help me learn who they are or what their name is. I couldn't tell you their name in the hallway or on the quad or anywhere else I would see them throughout the day. So my first strategy is before anyone speaks in the classroom, before they ask a question or a comment, whatever it is, if I don't know their name, I ask them their name. This gets repetitive. This gets awkward. This can even get slightly embarrassing if you're asking students their names 9 to 10 weeks into the semester. But if you're committed to learning their names, and we'll talk a little bit on the next slide about the advantages of learning their names, if you don't know that person's name, you have to be honest and ask them what their name is each and every time before they speak. And that's okay. Again, I'll get to the advantages in a moment. Next. The classic note card. I'm sure many of you use this in your classes. You know, on the first day, they get the syllabus and they get a note card. And I tell my students on their note card that they write their name, their preferred pronouns, their year in school, their major, their hometown, and a fun or interesting fact about themselves. In the smaller classes, you know, my 30 or 35 person classes, we then use those to do a formal introduction. But in my larger classes, I use the note cards to take attendance. But in my larger classes, I actually use the note cards after I've learned everybody's name. I don't use them to learn names. I don't use them to take attendance. I get that to have a little bit of information about them for once I've learned who they are. My primary method for learning and memorizing their names is a seating chart. And so my big format class takes place in Lanigan, 102 and 104. And so I have those rooms mapped out. I know how many rows there are, and I know how many seats in each row there are. And then so I make that grid pattern on a piece of paper. And after the first 2 weeks, so the Tuesday of week 3, let's say, I tell my students, and I prepare them for this. Okay, you've had a couple weeks in class. I want you to choose the row you're going to sit in for the rest of the semester. So they have a bit of autonomy in choosing where they sit. They can still sit with their friends, right? You're not totally controlling their body. You're allowing them some freedom. But then I'm saying to them, I want you to sit in this row, somewhere in this row for the rest of the semester. That's what really helps me. When I can have 10 students, 9 students, 11 students, 8 students, day after day after day, week after week after week, month after month after month, sitting in the same row, and then I can study with the seating chart, right? I can look at the seating chart during class, I can look at it before class, I can look at it after class. So the seating chart is my best way of ensuring that I learn everybody's name. Obviously, you have to study. And I have here at home, before class, and after class. And so these are, I'm already studying, for example, through my Oswego, we have the pictures of all of our students. Pictures can be misleading. We'll talk about that in a minute. They're not always accurate, and not everybody has a picture, especially the transfer students. So at home, you can use the seating chart and those pictures. But before class, what I mean is I quiz myself each day watching the doors. I arrive early at the bottom of the pit. And so I watch the doors, and if I can name, to see how many students I can name accurately when they're coming in, before they've taken their seats. So that's the before class. During class, I also find very useful. And so my students are conditioned to expect there to be a documentary or music or some kind of audio visual at the beginning of class, that when they come into the room, it's already on, and that they come down and sit in their seats. And so I can use that 5 to 10 minutes that I'm showing a comedy clip, or I'm showing a documentary, or I'm showing a news clip, or I'm playing music, in order to test myself as the students are sitting in their seats. So I can silently look around, look them in the eye, and quiz myself. So that's what I mean by at home, before class, and during class. Now, during class, I also practice. I take 2 to 3 minutes out of each and every class until I learn everybody's name, and go row by row, column by column, student by student, and practice their names. This is a little awkward for students at the beginning, but then at like week 3 or 4 or 5, whenever it is, they're like, oh my God, he's not going to stop. He's going to go to the back row. He's going to go all the way to the cheap seats. Yes. And slowly, methodically, I work myself all the way to the back of the row, and they know it's coming. And so even if it's week 6, week 7, week 8, I will admit it took me till week 10 this semester in order to learn everybody's name in the 100-person class. But that's only 10 a week. And I should be able to do maybe 25 a week, but it's real difficult with the masks. So I do take that time during the actual class, when I have everyone seated in the room, to do my own roll call. Second to last, I did mention that I find it difficult with the photos sometimes because students don't look like their photo, or there is no photo, or there's just a bad picture, whatever it is. So I have several extra credit assignments, and I get them moving around campus, like take a picture of yourself here, like do a write-up, something like that. And then they post the picture, and then they post the write-up in order for them to receive extra credit. So this is a way of incentivizing students to provide you with an updated picture, but certainly not requiring it, and not getting into that that kind of sort of creepy zone of your teacher requesting up-to-date images of you. Last and finally, I have my journal assignment, and I do assign journals in the small classes as well as the large classes. And like the note card, the journal assignment allows me to enhances my knowledge of the student and of who they are by providing some background information. Whatever the student is willing to share with me, I'm willing to hear it. And that helps me to learn their names. It helps me to learn their faces. It also ensures that I know the students who are totally engaged, even if they're not participating in class. And I do, we'll talk about it in a minute, but I do base even my large classes around some level of interaction with my students. I know I'm talking fast, but I'm trying to get through 2 slides. And I said to my wife yesterday that I don't even think I can introduce myself in 20 minutes anymore. I'm so long-winded, but we're going to go shift fast to, these are the strategies I use for learning names. But now I want to talk about the outcomes of learning student, and more particularly the outcomes of learning student names. First and foremost, you earn their respect. It's always one of my objectives of this semester that by the end of term, I will have earned my students' respect. Well, it's very hard to respect someone if they don't know your name. This is even more important, or there's different levels of importance this last semester and going into next semester too, because so many people are having problems with technology. For instance, I don't allow any phones, tablets, earbuds, nothing, no technology during classroom. And it's a real different thing if you say, Eric, put your phone away, and then go back to your lecture. Or you say, Julia, the mask goes on top of your nose. Rather than, excuse me, who are you again? Third row, red shirt. Could you put your mask back on? It's a completely different orientation and relationship to the student. So there's disciplinary. We're being asked to police our students' bodies in a way that we never have been before. The only way that that's successful is if they respect you and respect the classroom. Finally, content. I deal with some heavy content. Colonization and conquest, gender and genocide, race and religious freedom. So when dealing with heavy content, I have found, yes, that students tend to open up more, that students tend to dive deeper, that students even tend to respect their peers more when we're not anonymous, when I know who all of them are. Yes, so you earn a student's respect when you learn their name. Next, increase the comfort level of participating in the large group. Students are gun shy to participate in small groups. They're real gun shy to participate in large groups sometimes, and I have to attack that on day one. The class is not based on participation. It's not. I don't try to have a discussion with 100 people, but I need students to ask questions. I need students to make comments, not only because some folks learn better that way, but because I don't know what's going on in their head and I don't know their frame of references, right? So I need them to be interactive in class. Third, to cultivate what I call repeat offenders. And those are the students who take more than one course with you throughout their time. And I don't know what you teach. I don't know what level of, I don't know what your role at the university is, but I'm in a very small department, and I'm the only professor who teaches only Native American Studies courses here. So it's important. My enrollment, I care about my enrollment numbers, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. And so for my upper division courses this semester, and this is the highest it's ever been, 44 out of my 58 enrollees are repeat offenders. So I've had 76% of my students in the upper division classes before this semester. And so I don't have to relearn their names. So it's really easy to learn names in my upper division courses. And those students set the tone for the entire rest of the semester. So it's a very different experience having the large format classes where I know no one versus the small format classes where I already know 76% of the student body going into next semester. I have a student, and they don't stop at 2, right? Like 2, 3, 4, 5. I have a student who after next semester, she will have taken 8 courses with me at SUNY Oswego. I teach 7 courses. She's taken all of them, and she'll TA for me as well during her senior year. And that's a lot, right? Next, Support overtired or support our overtired and overstressed student body. And I also have the word invisible here in parentheses, because I want to see all of my students, even if they're not the most talkative, right? Even if they don't have all the questions, even if they don't come to class all the time, I want to know that they're one of the students that aren't coming to class. And I want them to know that I see them, no matter how invisible they try to be in the classroom. Yes. And that if they want it, I'm also there to support. I'm also there to support them, and that I'm empathetic to their state of overtiredness and their state of being overstressed. The next outcome, and I'm ending with this, so I don't consider this a negative outcome, right? This is not a negative envelope. This is a positive envelope. If you know all your students' names, you will see an uptick in service requests, letters of recommendation, right? Interviews that they have to perform for other classes. I get asked to do a lot of interviews for John. John knows about the interviews that get assigned from other classes. Well, I didn't know about that before I came to SUNY Oswego, but now I'm doing 3 or 4 a semester. I'm also the as of last semester, I should say, I'm also now the faculty advisor of the women's club lacrosse team. Not because of my prowess in lacrosse, right? Not because of my deep knowledge of the club politics at SUNY Oswego, but because I had a student who took 3 of my classes who knew that she could come to me and I would say, yes, yeah, I'll support your team. Yeah, I'll sponsor your team. No, I don't want the women's club lacrosse team to disappear here. Yes, I'll be the faculty sponsor. Last, student evaluations. And I hear a lot of my colleagues are very, very concerned with their student evaluations, especially in the last 3 to 4 semesters, which is a totally logical thing to say. But let me provide you just with a bit of data points. And this is from my last NAS 100 class, my last large class. So the first large format class since the beginning of the pandemic. And I saw this repeated over and over again. I really like that he made an effort to learn all 100 names in our class. I really respect and appreciate how he learned all 100 or so students' names by face. He was one of the few professors I've had this semester who did that. He really cares about his students, learning every single name row by row in our 100 student class. Finally, Dr. Chanis had an engaging and interesting teaching style. I really liked that he encouraged class participation and actually took time to get to know us and our names. It felt more personal than many large lecture courses that I have taken. And look, it's certainly not, learning their names is certainly not a panacea, right? Like, this is not the thing that is going to solve all problems in our uniquely difficult learning environment. But I do think that it is a necessary first step in reacclimating students to university life. So I'm very proud that I made it through that in 18 minutes. I know I talked too fast, but if there's time for any questions or comments, I think we have arrived there.
I would just add, for student names, I Google a lot. I use how to pronounce on which has audio files of how to pronounce certain names. And I kind of do that so for class 40 and under, I'll call roll the first day, and then I'll go with the phonetic online pronunciation. Then I'll ask students if I have it right. And then I'll make a little notation too, because I do think, it's a real sign of respect to learn students' names. It's also a sign of respect to make an effort to pronounce their names correctly, even if they're unfamiliar. So I had a student from Korea whose name was Youngmin. She's like, well, you can just call me Mina. And I often concern that international students will often shorten or Americanize a name to make others more comfortable, right? And that I don't think that should have to happen. And so, yeah, I think it kind of adds it to really make an effort with pronunciation of some of the most difficult names.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Liz. And I didn't say it, but just one thing is, you might consider, if you do use the note card, you can ask them to write out the phonetic pronunciation, so you don't have to put them on the spot, or you don't have to keep repeating it to the entire group.
someone who reads names at graduation, students are terrible at writing the phonetic pronunciation of their names. Right? They don't seem to know the phonic rules about pronunciation. So I'll just tell them I usually have to ask and then do it myself because accuracy will vary with that. But I mean, I'm glad you mentioned classroom management. I teach a large class that kind of follows in semester the large class that John teaches. Now, when I've taught 200 to 300, I was lucky to learn 75 names, but I found by learning 75 names, students I left the impression that I really did know all their names, even though I didn't, because I knew enough to call people or things like that. But you're right, being able to sort of call people by name or something like that really adds, I think it does affect behavior because now they sort of understand that they're not as anonymous as they thought. And it kind of affects classroom behavior a lot.
I have a quick question, Michael. While you were calling all those names, how did they entertain themselves? Because I might, have to call 25 or 30 and I can feel them getting restless sometimes. So I was just curious, what's going down while you're going through that process?
I go fast, Maureen, for sure. I don't look down or anything like that. It's dot, 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 I don't particularly care. It is, I mean, it's awkward, especially in the beginning, but once they learn that I'm actually going to learn once they understand that I'm actually going to learn all their names, it's fine. And, you just have to make the commitment from day one or week 3, let's say, to go through the class each and every day. I don't know if I don't care. I don't care is an accurate answer, but I hope that helps, Maureen.
Do you ever challenge the students that if they actually got all the students' names right, you give them a prize or something?
No, Scott, but when I used to teach world religions, if I had a little bit more time, I would have led with the Animaniac song, The Countries of the World, because in my world religions class, I would, if a student would learn that song, then have to take create a video of themselves blindfolded singing it, they would get 4% extra credit points, one point for each of the sections. And the hardest line in that song is always, for me, Mozambique. It's the end of the 3rd verse. Mozambique, Zambia, Swaziland, Gambia, Guinea, Algeria, Ghana. And if they could get all the way through that, that's worth at least 4 extra credit points to me, Scott. But I will say this too, Scott, like when I call them all by names, they start to. They stop with the he, she, they, and use more. So they do model my behavior.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Michael.